I arrived at Ravensbrook Asylum just as the last rays of sunlight slipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the crumbling stone walls. The asylum had been abandoned for decades, yet it still loomed over the landscape like a monument to forgotten nightmares. I stood at the gate, staring up at the broken windows, and for a moment I questioned why I had come. It had been years since my sister Emily vanished. She was admitted here when her mind began to unravel, and I never saw her again. They said she died, but something about her disappearance never sat right with me. Now I was here to uncover the truth. But as I stood in the eerie silence, doubt gnawed at me. The asylum wasn't just abandoned, it felt alive, as if the building itself was waiting for me to step inside. As I pushed open the rusted gate, a cold wind whispered through the overgrown courtyard, carrying faint echoes, like distant voices I couldn't quite make out. I shivered and pulled my jacket tighter. But the chill that ran down my spine wasn't from the wind. Something was off. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me, urging me to turn back. But I had come too far to stop now. Inside the asylum, the hallways were dark and damp, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet. My footsteps echoed, but there was another sound, faint, barely noticeable at first, like the soft murmurs of a conversation happening just out of earshot. I paused, straining to listen. Was someone else here? No, it couldn't be. The place had been deserted for years. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The shadows seemed to shift as I walked, and every time I glanced over my shoulder, I thought I saw movement in the corner of my eye. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but the unease in my chest only grew. The deeper I went into the asylum, the stronger the feeling became. Something was watching me. I could feel eyes on my back, and the air felt thick with an unseen presence. I reached the door to Emily's old room, and my hand trembled as I turned the knob. Inside, the room was untouched, frozen in time. Her bed, her books, even the drawings she used to make were still scattered across the desk. It was as if she had just stepped out, and any moment now, she'd walk through the door. But instead, I heard it, a whisper, faint, barely there, but unmistakable. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned toward the sound. It seemed to come from the walls, a voice too quiet to understand but too real to ignore. I backed away, my breath quickening. Was it Emily? No, it couldn't be. Could it? The whispers grew louder, and I suddenly felt dizzy, like the room was spinning around me. My thoughts were jumbled, my memories flashing in and out of focus. I wasn't just hearing things, I was losing control, just like Emily had before she disappeared. The asylum, the whispers, they were doing something to me, pulling me in. I needed to get out, now. But as I stumbled toward the door, the whispers followed, echoing through the halls, getting louder, closer. The wind outside Ravensbrook Asylum had died down, leaving the night eerily still. Inside the darkened halls, the silence was unnerving. The only sound was my own breathing, shallow and quick, as I made my way deeper into the asylum's forgotten corridors. The walls around me seemed to close in, the air thick with an unsettling pressure. That's when I first heard it, a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was just the wind sneaking through the cracks in the walls, but this was different. It wasn't random. It was low, soft, almost like someone was trying to speak, just out of earshot. My heart skipped a beat, and I stopped, listening hard. There it was again. Clearer this time, a voice. I couldn't make out the words, but it seemed to be coming from the very walls themselves, like the asylum was speaking to me. I shook my head, trying to brush it off. Old buildings creak, I told myself. It's just the wind. But my body tensed, every nerve on high alert. The whispers didn't stop. Instead, they seemed to follow me, echoing faintly through the halls. Each time I turned a corner, they grew louder, as if someone or something was right behind me, watching. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I spun around, convinced I'd catch someone there, but the hallway behind me was empty, dark and still. The unsettling feeling in my chest tightened. Something wasn't right. As I moved forward, my foot kicked something small, a piece of crumpled paper lying on the floor. I bent down, my fingers trembling slightly as I picked it up. It was old, brittle, stained with age. Unfolding it, I found a single word scrawled in shaky handwriting. Emily, my sister's name. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding. Who could have left this? How did they know about Emily? Was someone playing a sick joke on me? Or was there something else going on here? I wanted to brush it off, tell myself it was a coincidence, but I couldn't. The asylum was doing something to me. The walls were whispering her name over and over, like they knew something I didn't. My hands shook as I crumpled the note back up and shoved it in my pocket. I needed to get out of here, but I couldn't. Not yet. I hadn't found what I came for. But the whispers, the voices, they were starting to sound familiar. The further I ventured into the asylum, the more I felt the weight of the building pressing down on me. The whispers had grown louder, and now they weren't just faint voices. They were calling my name. Daniel! I stopped in my tracks, my heart thudding in my chest. I turned slowly, scanning the empty hallway behind me. There was no one there, but I could feel eyes on me, watching from the shadows. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, trying to calm my racing thoughts. "You're just tired," I whispered to myself. "It's all in your head." But the sound of my name, the eerie, familiar tone, wouldn't leave me alone. I pulled the note with Emily's name out of my pocket, unfolding it again. The word was gone. Instead, the paper was blank. My hands shook as I turned it over and over. Had I imagined it? No, this was real. I was sure of it. But as I looked around, nothing made sense anymore. "Daniel." The voice was closer this time, clearer. I jerked my head toward the sound, and for a split second, I saw her, Emily, standing at the end of the hall, her face pale, her eyes hollow. My breath caught in my throat. "Emily?" I called, stepping forward. But as I blinked, she was gone, vanished into thin air. My stomach twisted in knots. I knew this place was playing tricks on me, twisting reality into something I couldn't understand. But Emily, I had seen her. Or had I? I stumbled forward, my mind racing. The walls seemed to warp around me, bending in ways that made no sense. Doors that had been closed moments before were suddenly open, revealing rooms that shouldn't exist. I walked through one, finding myself back where I started. The same hallway stretching before me, endless and impossible. My head spun. I leaned against the wall for support, my hands trembling. "This isn't real," I muttered, but the walls around me seemed to pulse, the whispers growing louder, mocking me. I tried to turn back, but my feet felt heavy, like they were sinking into the floor. As I glanced down, I saw the ground beneath me ripple like water. I gasped, stumbling back, my heart pounding in my chest. My hands gripped the edges of a nearby table for support, but it crumbled under my fingers, disintegrating into dust. My mind was unraveling. Every step I took seemed to lead me deeper into this nightmare, and the lines between reality and illusion were blurring beyond recognition. Then I heard it again, her voice, right behind me. "You can't leave, Daniel." I whipped around, and there she was again, Emily, standing closer this time, her expression unreadable. My pulse quickened. "Emily? What's happening to me?" But she didn't answer. She only smiled, a twisted, knowing smile that sent a chill through my veins. Her eyes gleamed with something dark, something that made my skin crawl. And then, as quickly as she had appeared, she was gone again. I was left alone, standing in the silent hallway, surrounded by echoes and shadows. I was losing my grip on reality, and the worst part was, I wasn't sure if I cared anymore. The asylum had me, and I didn't know if I could ever break free. As I stumbled through the hallways of Ravensbrook Asylum, I knew I was running out of time. The whispers were everywhere now, growing louder, more insistent. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had to know what happened here. What happened to Emily? I found myself standing in front of an old office door, its surface worn and cracked. Something about it felt different, like it was calling me. With shaking hands, I pushed it open, revealing a dusty room filled with scattered papers and overturned furniture. On the desk, a thick leather-bound journal lay half open, its pages yellowed with age. My heart pounded in my chest as I flipped through the brittle pages. It was Dr. Crane's journal. His handwriting was neat but erratic, his words scrawled with a desperation that mirrored my own growing fear. October 17th. The experiments are failing. The voices, they grow louder each day. The patients hear them. I hear them. But I must continue. Emily shows promise. She is different. Her connection to the echoes is stronger than the others. Emily. My breath caught in my throat. What had he done to her? I kept reading, my hands trembling as I turned each page. November 2nd. The walls, they speak to me now. The others don't understand, but I know the truth. Emily is the key. She can unlock the voices, bring them into the world. But there's a risk. If I fail, we will all be trapped here, forever. The room seemed to spin as I processed his words. Dr. Crane had experimented on Emily, trying to tap into something beyond this world. The voices, the whispers that haunted the asylum. But it wasn't just Emily. It was me. I was connected to this place, this madness. That's why the asylum felt alive, why I couldn't escape the whispers. I was part of whatever Dr. Crane had unleashed. But why? Why me? I shoved the journal into my bag, my pulse racing. I needed answers, but all I had were more questions. How had Emily become the key? What had Crane done to her? And why did I feel like I was next? The room felt colder, and the shadows seemed to lengthen around me. The air grew thick, pressing down on my chest, making it harder to breathe. The walls, they were watching me. I could feel it. Suddenly I heard footsteps behind me, soft but deliberate. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. A figure stood in the doorway, Dr. Crane. No, that was impossible. He was long dead. The figure stepped forward, and in the dim light, I saw his face. It wasn't Crane at all. It was a man, maybe in his 40s, wearing an old caretaker's uniform. His eyes were hollow, haunted. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "The asylum doesn't let people go." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Who are you? What do you know about Emily?" His expression darkened. Emily, she was special. Crane saw it, but he pushed her too far. She heard the voices, heard them like none of us ever could. And now she's part of this place. "What do you mean, part of this place?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked at me, his eyes full of sorrow. "You've heard them, haven't you? The echoes. They're not just memories. They're trapped souls, patients, doctors, anyone who was caught in Crane's madness. And now you're hearing them too. You're connected to them, just like Emily was." The realization hit me like a wave of ice. I wasn't just looking for answers about my sister. I was becoming part of the same nightmare she had been trapped in. The asylum wasn't just a place. It was alive, feeding on fear, trapping those who got too close. "But why me?" I whispered. The caretaker shook his head. "You were always part of it. Emily wasn't the only one. Crane's experiments reached further than you realize." My mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. I had come here searching for my sister, but now I realized the truth was much darker. I wasn't just here because of Emily. The asylum had been waiting for me, drawing me in, whispering my name long before I'd ever arrived. Fear clawed at my chest, but a new determination burned in its place. I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had to find Emily, had to break the cycle. The caretaker's voice broke through my thoughts. "If you stay, you may never leave." I looked at him, my heart pounding. "I have to know. I have to find her." He sighed, shaking his head slowly. "Then God help you." As he turned to leave, the whispers surged around me, louder than ever, filling the air with a cacophony of voices. The walls seemed to close in, and I realized with chilling certainty that I was running out of time. The asylum wanted me, and it wasn't going to let me go without a fight. The whispers were deafening now, crashing against my mind like waves in a storm. Every step I took through the asylum felt heavier, like something was pulling me deeper into its grasp. I knew I was close. Whatever had been playing these sick games, whatever had trapped Emily, and now me, was waiting. I reached a door at the end of the hallway, marked only by a faint engraving on its surface. Dr. Crane's office. My hand hovered over the handle. My instincts screamed to turn back, to run, but I couldn't. I had to know. I had to face it. With a shaky breath, I pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick and oppressive, heavy with the weight of years of suffering. The room was dimly lit by a single flickering lamp on the desk. And there, in the center, sat a figure. It was Dr. Crane. His face was pale, hollow, as though the life had been drained from him long ago. He turned to face me, his cold eyes locking onto mine. But something was wrong. He looked twisted, like he wasn't fully human anymore. Shadows clung to him, warping his figure, distorting his movements. "Daniel," he said, his voice low and echoing. "I've been waiting." My blood ran cold. The voice, the one I'd been hearing since I arrived, it was his. He had been in my head, manipulating me, guiding me here. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice cracking. I took a step back, but the door behind me slammed shut, trapping me inside. Dr. Crane stood slowly, his twisted form towering over me. "You were always part of the experiment. You and Emily. She was strong, yes, but you're the key." My heart pounded in my chest. The key? What did that mean? "You've been hearing them, haven't you?" Crane said, his lips curling into a grotesque smile. "The voices, the echoes of those trapped here. They've been calling to you because you can hear them, just like Emily." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "I'm not part of this." "Oh, but you are," he hissed, taking a step closer. "You've been part of it since the day Emily was admitted. I chose you both for a reason. And now, you're here, just as I knew you would be." I backed away, my mind reeling. The asylum, the whispers, they had been manipulating me all along, leading me to this moment. Crane had orchestrated everything. Emily's disappearance, the voices, the hallucinations, it was all him. Suddenly, the walls around me seemed to pulse, the whispers rising to a fever pitch. My vision blurred, and I could feel the asylum tightening its grip on me, crushing me under the weight of its dark energy. "Let me go," I shouted, stumbling as my legs buckled under the pressure. Crane laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "You can't leave, Daniel. You're part of this place now. Just like Emily." I felt the room closing in, the shadows swirling around me. My thoughts were jumbled, the line between reality and madness snapping like a fragile thread. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Was I even still standing in the room? Or was I lost, trapped in the asylum's endless maze? Then I heard her voice. Emily. Clear, unmistakable. Daniel, you have to fight it, she whispered, her voice cutting through the chaos. You have to break the connection. I clung to her words, my heart pounding. Break the connection. But how? I looked at Crane, his twisted form looming over me, the source of all this madness. He was the connection. He was the one controlling everything. My fear and confusion gave way to a burning resolve. With a surge of strength, I lunged toward the desk, grabbing the only thing within reach, a shard of broken glass from a cracked mirror. Crane's eyes widened in surprise as I swung the shard toward him. You won't control me, I yelled, driving the shard into his chest. The moment the glass pierced him, the asylum roared to life, the walls shaking violently. Crane let out a horrible guttural scream, his body convulsing as shadows poured out of him, swirling around the room. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, but I didn't stop. I twisted the shard deeper, and the shadows began to dissolve, fading into the air. Crane's twisted form crumbled before my eyes, dissolving into nothingness. For a moment, everything was still. The whispers had stopped. The asylum was silent. But as I stood there, panting, my hands shaking, I realized something was wrong. The walls were still pulsing, the air still thick with tension. I hadn't broken free. I was still trapped. And then I heard her voice again, Emily's voice. Daniel, you were always part of this. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I turned slowly, and there she was, Emily. But she wasn't the sister I remembered. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, just like Crane's. She smiled, and my blood ran cold. You're part of the asylum now, she whispered, stepping toward me. Just like me. My heart sank as the truth hit me. I hadn't saved her, I hadn't escaped. The asylum had me now just like it had her. I was never getting out. And the last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me was the sound of the whispers, calling my name. Even now, as I sit miles away from that cursed place, I can still feel it. Ravensbrook has a way of holding on to you like it stitched itself into my mind. The asylum may be gone, crumbled into dust the moment I destroyed Crane, but its whispers, they linger. At night, when everything is quiet, I can still hear them. Soft, faint, but unmistakable. My name, carried on the wind, just like before. Daniel, I try to tell myself it's my imagination, that it's just the remnants of the nightmare I lived through, a trick of the mind. But deep down, I know better. Ravensbrook isn't finished with me. Maybe it never will be. Emily's face haunts me. That smile, empty, knowing, stays with me. Burned into my memory. I thought I had saved her, but now I wonder if I ever really knew her at all. She's part of the asylum now, part of its endless whispers, just like I'm afraid I'll soon be. I've tried to move on, to leave it all behind, but there's a weight in my chest that won't lift. Something tells me that Ravensbrook's hold on me wasn't just about Emily. It was about something bigger, something darker. And it's still out there, waiting. The echoes never really stop. They quiet down, sure, but they always return when I least expect them. A fleeting shadow in the corner of my eye, a faint murmur just outside my window. Sometimes, I even hear her voice, Emily's voice, calling to me, asking me to come back. And every time, I wonder, will I? I know I shouldn't. But the pull of Ravensbrook is strong, and I can't shake the feeling that this story isn't over. The whispers will come again. They always do. And when they do, I'm not sure if I'll have the strength to resist. The echoes of Ravensbrook Asylum have found me, and I fear they'll never let go. Have you ever felt that unsettling chill? Like something just beyond your sight is watching, waiting? Or maybe you found yourself questioning if what you see, hear, or even feel is really there. We'd love to hear your stories. Share your experiences with fear, tension, or the unknown in the comments below. After all, the mind can be a strange and frightening place, can't it? If tales of psychological twists and mind-bending horrors intrigue you, join us here at Haunting Chapters. Subscribe, like, and share to be part of a group that dares to explore the shadows. Every week, we dive deeper into the darkest corners of the mind, where reality and fear blur. Don't miss out. Together, we'll unlock the mysteries that keep us up at night. But remember, the stories we tell are crafted to thrill, entertain, and spark your imagination. While they may draw from real legends and eerie folklore, they remain works of fiction. Always stay curious, but also stay safe. Never venture into places that might be dangerous or off limits. Are you brave enough to join us?